You know PulseX and Pulsechain. Heard about both of them, right? Have you ever wondered which one is causing a bigger disruption? Which one is getting more people's interest? Which one is more popular? Which one could have the best performance based upon the interest around it? Well, I'm going to show you some data today that nobody else is showing around the website ranking for PulseX and Pulsechain and search volume history on the two largest search engines in the world, Google and YouTube. So, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. So, let's get into this here. Alexa is a Amazon company that aggregates all sorts of analytical data that they resell to people or resell to companies, right? So you can go through, well, it's currently still available, and you can put in PulseX.com and it will give you the ranking of that website based upon traffic, how long people stay on the site, how quickly people bounce. I'm sure somebody else who's more technical on that side would give us even more information. But we get to see here that PulseX is ranked 20,000th. So out of all of the sites on Alexa, they're 20,000th, right? That's pretty decent. And you get to see over the last 90 days, it was absolutely nothing, right, in terms of top sites. And then it's gone from basically the millionth spot to the 20,000th spot. And you get to see right here, just continually, gradually increasing the interest on it. But do you think that Pulsechain maybe does a little bit better? So I took Pulsechain and I did the same exact thing here. We get to see. So when we scroll down, let's go down here to the bigger graph. We go down here, they're at 29,000. Was that what you were expecting? Were you expecting Pulsechain to be more popular, or were you expecting PulseX to be more popular? Let me know down below in the comments. And what do you think this disparity is from, right? Over the last 90 days, Pulsechain is 30,000th in terms of the ranking globally. In the United States, 16,000th versus 7,300th. So like in the United States, PulseX is far more popular, right? Significantly more popular. And then globally, their ranking, 30,000th versus 20,000. That's 10,000 additional sites in between them. So that's, I don't know, that's pretty significant. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments. But this is just one data point. What if we could understand Google searches? Well, we can. It's called Google Trends, right? You can put in search terms here. So we have PulseX and we have Pulsechain worldwide over the last 12 months for web search. So Google is the largest search engine in the planet. So to try to draw any conclusions from this data is like anything concrete is probably foolish, but to understand what the marketplace is actually interested in and then what you could infer from that, I think might be a better way to kind of gauge enthusiasm or whatever. So over here, we have Pulsechain in red and PulseX. Hopefully, let me see if you guys can see this. Okay, let me zoom up a little bit. Here we go. So Pulsechain is in red and PulseX is in blue. So you get to see that PulseX has basically just started. So we see the search volume for them is consistently above Pulsechain. So that also goes, like, matches up with our data here, that PulseX is more popular. Is this going to die off, right? Because we see the same type of thing with Pulsechain. When it was basically, I'm assuming this is when they talked about releasing it, or some news event happened at this point at least, and it caused a tremendous interest spike like this. Then it comes down into like a J curve, right, to swing before it swings back up and starts to gradually rise. Well, this spike of interest in terms of PulseX, which is the blue line, caused a additional like bleed off or whatever you want to call it to Pulsechain. Like one of them is successful or one of them gets a lot more attention. There's some extension, like there's a higher propensity for those people who look that up to also look up Pulsechain. It's just going to be a much smaller amount to that. But let's take a look at the last 3 months here. This is global, by the way. So you get to see, this is just over the last 90 days, because that's effectively what this data is over the last 90 days. We get to see it looks a lot closer than we do at the annual one, but still it's clear that PulseX is winning. Now let's go back to, let's check the United States, because on the Alexa site, it was a bit different. Well, it's still the same, right? They're still pretty, it's actually about similar. Well, blue is still ahead, which is PulseX. Oops, hopefully you guys can see that. Blue is still ahead in the second half of the last 90 days, even though there's several days here where Pulsechain had more search volume, but nothing crazy. The geographic layout is pretty interesting when you go to the global view. So let's go to global over the last 12 months. This is web search, and then we're going to go to YouTube search in just a second. So we get to see that there are parts around the world, right? Saudi Arabia is actually more interested in PulseX than Pulsechain, versus United States and Canada are both more interested in Pulsechain. That's super interesting. And the Saudi Arabia doesn't have anybody looking at PulseX. I'm sorry, Pulsechain over there. What is this one? India, there's a bunch of interest for PulseX. That's about 61% of all search traffic to 39, so a decent amount different. We've got, again, PulseX in South Africa. Interesting. Australia is Pulsechain. So this is kind of interesting. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The parts of the world that are more westernized, we'll call it, are all more interested in Pulsechain by the elementary view of it right here, where third, like world type countries, or countries that are not considered, and I bet that, is this Japan over here or something? Right, oops. Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, right? These are all PulseX, so not necessarily all of them, but the breakdown, right? We got certain parts of different parts of the world which are more interested in PulseX, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are and why. But let's dive into the YouTube search volume, because this is also super interesting. Again, we have the same exact chart here, right? Same exact thing. We have PulseX in blue, Pulsechain in red, and again, it's more popular. Let's take a look at the 30-day here and see how that looks. This stuff is fast. I don't know if you guys like the numbers or just trying to understand more of what's going on, but I definitely do. This is the YouTube search volume. So on YouTube, there's definitely a bigger difference between PulseX and Pulsechain. PulseX is more popular on YouTube over the last 90 days than Pulsechain on web search. So that's interesting. Maybe it's probably because it's newer, I would think, and people are just trying to understand it more. Let's go back to the 12-month here, and we're going to go to, yeah, global. Check this out, though. Serbia, or let's take a look here. I think I'm going to drop this off and just see what PulseX is. So PulseX is all around. It's actually the strongest here in Croatia, it looks like. Now let's check Pulsechain and see where the most of their traffic is coming from by just looking at the term by itself. You'll be able to see that. Oh, this is interesting, because this story looks different, right? This story looks different than when you have PulseX on here as a search term. It doesn't look the same at all, does it? It looks like it's barely growing. However, when you take PulseX out over the last 12 months, I mean, this clearly to me looks like it's, depending on what happens next, like that this could continue to trend upward potentially. But it just definitely looks more that way in this view by itself. And again, we have places out in like Europe that are top on the list here, or the top couple ones here. So let's go back to that other view here, and I want to hear what your thoughts are on what you believe is more popular based upon the data you saw here. And if you found this video interesting or intriguing, you learned something, take a second to share with somebody else. Got some other awesome stuff coming up in the future. Appreciate you guys. Peace.